Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, September 18th. We do have another hurricane out in the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean, Nigel. It looks like it will stay out over the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean as it makes a bend from a northwesterly direction that it's currently on to a northeasterly direction, and again will push out into the northern Atlantic. Maybe eventually it'll have an impact on Portugal, Spain, but certainly does not look like it'll come anywhere close to the U.S. Meanwhile, during the past weekend, of course, we had Hurricane Lee that moved up north, impacted eastern New England, and pretty much ended up where we thought it would, near the Bay of Fundy region, the bay between New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and then made landfall in Nova Scotia. First of all, on Lee, ended up going right about in this area right here, and became kind of post-tropical, extratropical towards the end there. It certainly weakened in terms of its central pressure as it moved over those colder and colder waters of the northwest Atlantic. Again, made landfall somewhere over New Brunswick and crossed pretty much over the mouth of the Bay of Fundy. Had an impact certainly on coastal Maine and all the way down to Cape Cod. Nothing too serious from what I can gather looking at observations over the past few days. Meanwhile, here's the location right now of Hurricane Nigel. 80-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds. It could very well become a major hurricane, but it stays well to the east of Bermuda and then starts its turn to the north and east and moves out over the open waters of the North Atlantic. Again, eventually it may have some kind of an impact as a weakened system on Portugal and Spain. Meanwhile, let's take a look back over the continental U.S., and we have a kind of an interesting setup developing for the weekend. It could result in a strong storm system along the East Coast this weekend that potentially can bring a widespread and a soaking rainfall to places like the Mid-Atlantic region, maybe going from Saturday going into the day on Sunday. Whether or not it's called a tropical system remains to be seen, but we'll see here in a moment that it looks like strong low pressure will first form just off the southeast U.S. coastline and likely moves up along the coast early to middle part of the upcoming weekend. Let's start off here with the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps. We'll talk about a key player involved for this potential weekend storm system along the eastern seaboard. This is using the Canadian model run, the conventional Canadian model run from 0Z last night. First of all, steep trough situated over the eastern states as we begin the day here on Monday. A cooler than normal day throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, for example. Temperatures will be hard-pressed to rise above that 70 to, let's say, 74 degree range for afternoon highs in Philadelphia, New York City, and it'll be a slow-moving storm system along the eastern seaboard this morning into the afternoon along the northern Mid-Atlantic coastline. It'll probably never clear out today in New York City. Stays cloudy and damp and cool. Some slow improvement across Philadelphia during the midday and afternoon hours, and certainly some sunshine headed for the D.C. area by the latter part of the morning. So we start off the work week here with a strong trough over the eastern states, but watch what happens as we move into the latter part of the week. First of all, this is the reflection at 500 millibars by tomorrow afternoon of Hurricane Nigel. Again, no threat at all to the U.S., not even a threat to Bermuda, well to the east of Bermuda. Now, let's go into the middle part of the week. This is Wednesday, and now we're moving into the day on Thursday, and finally Friday morning. A couple things to note here. First of all, low pressure starts to form at the surface, middle part of the atmosphere by Friday morning, just off the southeast U.S. coastline. We know the water temperature's still quite warm right along there, but look at the red starting to show up, the orange and red here, southeastern Canada. We'll go out a little bit farther in time, and this is the key player here. By Saturday morning, we have this ridge over the Canadian Maritime provinces, kind of extends across the northwest Atlantic. That ridge, it's always the case, a ridge can play a very important role in the development or movement of a low pressure system. And here we have quite a trough associated with that a wave of low pressure. Again, whether or not it's considered to be a tropical system remains to be seen. It could be, because it will develop over the warm waters of the southwestern Atlantic at the end of the work week here, going into the early part of the upcoming weekend. But with this ridge in place, again, like Lee, this will not be able to make a harmless trek out into the northern Atlantic. It looks like this ridge kind of sandwich it to the north and east and force it to go up along the eastern seaboard. May even start to turn a little bit to the north and west. Let's go out a little bit farther in time, and here we go. Indeed, this particular model has this upper level trough kind of moving to the north and west as it's really surrounded by high pressure ridging all the way to its north and west, to its north and to its east. So again, kind of a rogue low pressure area may form on Friday into Saturday off the southeast U.S. coastline, and then be kind of forced to go up along over the eastern states, potentially resulting in a widespread and soaking rain event this week in places like the Mid-Atlantic region. So it's something very interesting indeed. Let's go all the way out to Sunday, and here we go on Sunday. Still some reflection of that low pressure over the eastern states, and strong ridging to the north and to the east will play an important role in the evolution of the storm system this upcoming weekend. Now let's take a look at the surface maps, and we have low pressure right now along the Carolina coastline, just off the coastline, and this will be a kind of a slow mover. It ended up producing quite a decent rainfall up and down the eastern seaboard late yesterday, last night, going into the day. We're not quite done with it yet. Watch what happens with this storm system. It kind of hangs around the southern New England coastline. This is all the way into the Monday evening time period. New York City, probably no clearing today. It stays damp and cool with occasional showers. Philly may certainly get some sunshine by the afternoon hours here after slow improvement this morning, and D.C. will indeed get some sunshine probably by the late morning into the afternoon hours. But again, it kind of hangs around the southern New England coastline, causes quite a decent rainfall up across New England, and then it finally pulls on out. And then we'll start to look to the south and east. But for a few days here, very nice weather for much of the eastern states from Tuesday through Wednesday, Thursday, probably Friday as well. Again, very nice weather pattern for the Mid-Atlantic, for example, for Tuesday through Friday. Comfortable temperatures for this time of the year. But let's get all the way out to the late weekend. Here we go, Thursday, and finally into the morning hours on Friday. One thing I want to point out here, again, this low pressure area will form over some very warm waters of the southwestern Atlantic. And take a look at this inflow right here. This is a southeasterly flow of air right out of the tropical region. So indeed, tropical moisture will absolutely likely get involved with this developing low pressure area. Again, this is the southeastern coastline as of Friday morning. Tropical feed of moisture coming in on the eastern flank of this storm system. At the same time, strong high pressure builds over New England by Friday morning. And you notice these isobars here starting to kind of tighten up here. You have the difference in pressure between this high to the north, a 1030 high to the north, and a developing, intensifying low, 1004 millibars. And indeed, we'll end up having a pretty tight pressure gradient. Could end up being a windy storm system with winds out of the east, southeast, by the time it gets up to the Mid-Atlantic region, with high pressure to the north and intensifying low pressure to the south. And now let's go out ahead into the early part of the weekend. And here we go, by Saturday morning, all out, very strong storm system right along the coastline. Again, whether or not it's considered to be a tropical system kind of remains to be seen. Doesn't matter in terms of the potential for some heavy rains, strong winds throughout the Carolinas and Mid-Atlantic region. This is the Saturday morning forecast map, and the other models are pretty consistent with this particular model here. The GFS and Euro also indicate the idea of a strong storm system impacting much of the eastern states in that Friday night, Saturday into Sunday time frame. And again, we talked about pressure gradient. Look at the tightness of this isobar pattern here. Those would be some strong winds along the coastal areas of the Delmarva, for example, southern New Jersey potentially, and a widespread heavy rainfall is on the table here. And then the Canadian model kind of slides that surface system to the north and west, so that by the time we get to Saturday evening, kind of pulls inland to the western part of Virginia. And soaking rain event slides up the coastline into New York State, into New York City, and the southern part of New England. Let's go all the way out into Sunday morning, and here we go. The initial surface low starts off tucked in over the southeastern U.S. coastline, over those warm waters of the southwestern Atlantic, and eventually slides to the north and west to the eastern part of the Ohio Valley by Sunday morning, and heavy rains slide all the way up into New England. A high pressure to the north. Remember, we saw that 500 millibar pattern. There'll be a lot of high pressure to the north and to the east of this system, not allowing it to escape out into the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean. So again, quite an interesting setup developing here, looks like, for the upcoming weekend, with a strong low pressure area likely to ride up along the eastern seaboard, potentially bringing a widespread soaking rain event Friday night, Saturday, into the day on Sunday in much of the eastern U.S. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Orion.